Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is an E3 recap over the games that were announced and showed on each of the E3 press conferences. I'm going to be encapsulating all of them in this one video, and I'm not going to be using any gameplay footage, guys, because these videos can sometimes get flagged, and because it's going to be slightly long and encapsulating all of them, I don't want to screw the biggest potential of all the information in one space to be demonetized. So I apologise about that if you were looking for these videos, but they are across the internet and they're not that difficult to find. I will be doing coverage of them as well on separate videos, but they will be probably shorter than this one. So the first one we're going to talk about is Nintendo. I'm going down a list that I've got here from TechRadar, which is essentially just a list of the games that they showed. This could be incorrect, it could miss a few. 1000% mistakes are on my part for picking this source, but here we are. So Nintendo had every opportunity this year to steal E3, and I believe a lot of people think that they did. And they think that they did for pretty good reason, because they showcased a lot of games. It was pretty safe, all considered. It was what you expected. There was a couple of surprises here and there, which definitely salvaged it for me personally. And it was a large focus on video games, which is what I like E3 to be with press conferences. I personally prefer more new IPs, but this is Nintendo. They've been re-releasing the same game for the last 30 years, and everybody keeps buying them because they're awesome. So, in no particular order, guys, they showed The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. New game, it was a trailer, it showed some footage, familiar footage, and all across the internet recently, people have been mentioning, is it the Majora's Mask of Breath of the Wild? Which, I don't know what it is when it comes to gaming media, or just the internet in itself, but we love to compare and contrast everything with other things. It seems to be our favourite pastime, and I really like Majora's Mask, so if this is the kind of the Majora's Mask take on Breath of the Wild, that could be really cool, but I have absolutely no real understanding as to why people are making that allegation, because I don't know that much about Breath of the Wild, and I didn't pay that much attention to this, because I don't even own the system that you can play this on, which is very disappointing for me, but awesome for everybody else who does. They showed Luigi's Mansion 3, which I was super stoked for, because I am kind of a dynamite Luigi's Mansion fan, and you wouldn't think that. Because it's a long time ago, but I picked up Luigi's Mansion when it was released on the GameCube, the day it came out with the GameCube, and it was the only game I had, and I played it for a long time, and I love that game in many ways. I want to cover it for YouTubers, as much as it's not really a game that I can cover in my particular style usually. And there's a third one. I haven't even played the second one because it's on a system I don't have again, but Luigi's Mansion is a game that reminds me of the joy and the simplicity of simply enjoying video games without all the bullshit. None of the installs, none of the fucking updates, none of the patches, none of the microtransactions, none of the online garbage, nothing. It's just a pure and simple halcyon image of when video games made me smile and the world was a better place. And Luigi's Mansion 3 just sounds amazing to me, so I can't wait to watch somebody else play that, probably Badger on his stream, and gush and nerd out as I wish I owned a Switch. Unless we can emulate it, which I think we can, but I don't know how good the emulator is. I'll definitely be looking into that because I love me some Luigi's Mansion. Then they showed Animal Crossing New Horizon, which has apparently been delayed and is costing a lot of money, which is insanity, but there you go. Very popular title, this. This takes me back to my N64 and GameCube days, where the original Animal Crossing was going to come out, and then it kind of never did and took forever, and I never ended up playing it, so I have no history with this series, but I know it's incredibly popular, as much as it looks kind of like banal, menial tasks, the game, but people love to do that stuff, you know? And then we have Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield, or as I like to call it, Pokemon Cock and Balls, or Pokemon Meat and Veg, which is the new version of Pokemon with the new gen and all that stuff, you know. Every possible fridge magnet you could ever stick to a piece of fruit. It's Pokemon. You either like it or you don't. I can't convince you otherwise or bring you to the cause. You are either there with it and want it or you don't. I don't know anything about Pokemon anymore. The last one I played was Crystal, so I am so far removed from Pokemon at this point, there's no point even speaking. The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening was showcased, which is a remake, not a remaster. I think they want to make that very clear. I personally did not like the art style on this one. I'm a big fan of the classic looking Zeldas from the SNES and from the Game Boy and everything. I think those games look superb. I think even some of the more modern ones like these, Phantom Hourglass and that one with the train, even those ones have got kind of that, you know, the cel-shaded Wind Waker effect of the kiddie-ish visuals that look amazing with the great colours. This looks like Terrence and fucking Phillip, dude. I don't like this at all. It looks weird to me, and I don't know if I just was in a bad mood when I saw it, or if maybe I didn't see it correctly, but I do not like how this game looks, and I don't know why they've gone with a particular art style, because when you look back to, you know, that kind of top-down Zelda, there are so many better ones that they could have, you know, chosen to gone with, and they went with that instead. But there was a trailer for Super Mario Maker 2, which Mario Maker seems like a cool thing. If you love Mario and you want to play it, you can make your own levels and have a potentially endless game. And I've seen some people do insane things on this game with the most difficult looking courses. So if you want Mario and you want to make it really hard and really get good at Mario, and when you're at a party and somebody's like, well, what do? You're like, I play fucking Mario like a god, dude. What do you do? Then this could be the one for you. And then the next one is Astral Chain, which is a massive one for me. There wasn't a lot this year at E3 for me personally, but this is something that I'm very excited about, but at the same time it's kind of chained and bound to a console I don't own, which is of course Platinum's title Astral Chain, and there is a gameplay trailer that's up that I might look into perhaps making a video about, because every time I see this game, I'm scared of it, because I'm scared of Platinum these days. I love them, I adore them, I know what they're capable of, but I also know they're capable of less, and I don't want their studio to get smeared any more than it already has. So when I see the open world aspects of it, and it makes me think of Turtles and I want to die, and then when I see, you know, certain other areas of it, it makes me think of Nier Automata, and I really don't want that to have any fucking influence in this game. It pauses a few thoughts and a few questions and a few ponderances from myself, some trepidations. But then when you see the fighting looks legit. There are these moments where he's attacking these creatures, he launches it into the sky, he sends his like stand after it, the stand chains it in position while it's comboing it, and you're both attacking it at the same time in like an extended juggle, and it looks awesome. And like he has a slow motion dodge when the enemies attack him and he dodges at the right time, very reminiscent of Bayonetta, Legend of Korra, Transformers Devastation, whatever you want to say. And then he counters afterwards with this like vaulting kick, which looks kind of cool. It reminds me a little bit of Symphony of the Night, you know, when he plays Trevor and he's got that like dashing forward kick. Like, it looks like there's so much potential, and in the demo they even mention that they don't have all the abilities yet, so it's not going to have all the stuff that you're going to be able to do, and it's just going to get a lot better and a lot more interesting, and it looks like it's got great potential. Couple of red flags for me, because of my nature. I really don't like the font that dominates the game. The font it's a creative choice, and it vexes me personally. It's not something that many people are going to care at all about, but when I see that font, it's just like, really? You picked that one, dude? That one? You picked fucking Papyrus, even though it's not Papyrus. But you know what I mean? You know when you go to a restaurant, and it's fucking Papyrus on the menu? I feel like slapping the waiter. Come on, guys, you're trying to sell food, not fucking word art 1995. But the second thing as well is, there's this red aesthetic that's kind of this digitized, crystallized, very neon looking, you know, electrical red that's dominating a lot of the aesthetic, and it makes it look like Tron hell. And I'm not the biggest fan of that visual style, so I'm hoping that there's going to be a bit more diversity to it. But other than that, I'm super stoked for this game. I like the character design. I like it how at the beginning of the level, they all put that thing onto their arm, and it looks like a dual disc, you know, from Yu-Gi-Oh!, where they all like set it up and shit, and there's chains hanging from it. There are these intermission driving sections that are literally ripped out of Bayonetta, where you're shooting and driving the bike and skidding and dodging, and that looks pretty sweet. Those moments are used for exposition. There's like a whole bunch of stuff happening with this game. The bosses look big, the enemies have got well telegraphed attacks, the hits seem to matter. I'm a little concerned about the character doing 2 damage a hit, because you should never do 2 damage in any game ever, I don't care what you're doing. The player should never ever feel like he's doing 2 damage because you failed as a designer then. But whatever. The next one was Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order. I don't really know too much about Marvel Ultimate Alliance, I just know that the first 2 games were decent and seemed to have a lot of loyal fans. It's one of those games that comes alive when you play it in co-op because, you know, you and a bunch of friends get to be Marvel people and have fun beating dudes up. So there's a lot of people that'll be quite happy about that. Then we had Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the Necrodancer, featuring The Legend of Zelda. So I kind of hopped onto this immediately because I saw the timing of the movements, and I don't know much about Crypt of the Necrodancer, but I know the concept of it, and I think it's a really interesting fusion of ideas, and it makes me wonder if Nintendo gave them some money for this, because it is a pretty sweet idea, isn't it? You can only move on the beat, which is just so interesting to me. And then there was Fire Emblem's Three Houses, which I think Fire Emblem looks awesome, but I've never had the pleasure of playing them. I'm probably going to find out a way and devise a way to do so, because they seem like JRPGs worth playing. But this was the new one. I didn't see any furries, I didn't see any incest, but you know it's going to be in there. Then there was Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of Elusive Age Definitive Edition, which is one hell of a title, which is just a more condensed and fully flourished version of Dragon Quest XI. You already know if you like that game, if it's for you. If you're a Dragon Quest fan, maybe this is something that you want to check out. If you're already burned out on 11, maybe you don't. It comes with some new features. And then there was Dragon Quest Builders 2, which this is a sequel to the previous Minecraft-esque, like Terraria-inspired Dragon Quest knockoff thing. And once again, if you're up for this and you like this type of stuff, I imagine you're going to sink many hours into it and have a great time. But I have no really opinion on these games because I've only ever played one Dragon Quest game and I hated it. It just wasn't for me. It wasn't the styling of RPG that I particularly prefer. And from that moment onwards, I've always really respected the art style because I like the art style, but I've never been interested in the games. And Minecraft holds no attention for me at all. And then we got No More Heroes 3, which is a massive announcement for me personally, because No More Heroes is a series that I've always wanted to play, but I haven't had the pleasure to, and I was really worried about it, because previously they released a No More Heroes top-down piece of shit game that nobody should play or buy, and they gated No More Heroes 3 behind the release sales of that shitty top-down, nothing to do with the series, don't buy it, it's garbage game. So whenever a company does that, I get really worried, because to me it's just manipulative and not very cool, but at last we got a trailer anyway, and it looks like No More Heroes, which is a great thing. And the cool thing about this series is you are a badass, you have a crazy lightsaber, and you beat up a ton of bosses that are all really eclectic and creative, and how could it not be awesome on next-gen technology? Then we got Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, which I have a place in my heart for international track and field, and any kind of game that features Olympic sports is something that I definitely have a soft spot for, because I just like mashing buttons and doing pole vault and doing the horizontal bars and the rings and everything. So that could be cool, but I'll probably never play it. And then they showed Resident Evil 5 and 6 on the Switch in docked mode with like 420p resolution and probably 17 frames a second. So if for whatever reason you don't already own Resident Evil 5 or 6 and you want to play them portable and horrendously looking, then you now have that, which is perplexing, but cool if you like those games, and who knows, maybe. Admittedly, Resident Evil 5 is quite an old game now. Maybe it's not that demanding. Maybe they've managed to pull some strength out of the Switch and let you play that game on a decent clip, but I've been playing Resident Evil 5 recently on PC at 120 frames at 1080p, so I can't imagine anything fucking worse. We'll move to Microsoft now. Microsoft had the perfect opportunity to dig themselves out of the grave that Sony's dug for them the last few years by just consistently one-upping them in every conceivable way. This was the opportunity for Microsoft to show the thing they do not have. Microsoft has the most powerful console ever made, the most expensive console ever made, but they don't have any games. And all of the promises that have been pushed forward to their fans, asking them for patience, asking them to have faith, what have they been rewarded with? Crackdown fucking 3 and the power of the cloud. Yes. Wonderful, wonderful title, right? So in this E3, Sony's absent. Microsoft gets to put their stamp on this and really take the initiative, take the advantage, and just mic drop the greatest conference they could ever hope to do. They didn't do that. Instead, we got this. So once again, guys, in no particular order. They showed Halo Infinite. Halo is a big title. This is the second year it's premiered at E3. They showed it at E3 last year, where it was just a field and a title and a helmet and very little else. And then they showed us almost just as much nothing this year. The only difference is they gave us a release date, and they said it was going to launch with the Scarlet, which is the new Xbox. So, Halo Infinite will release with the new Xbox, like OG back in the day Xbox, when Halo 1 came out. So it's quite a big reveal, right? Quite a big thing. Problem is, they didn't show anything. And I don't know if they're keeping the cards to the chest because they've drastically overhauled something, or if they don't have faith in what they've made, but the second year in a row you show a fucking pre-rendered trailer to a game people actually give a fuck about is not good enough. I'm sorry. It isn't. You need to give people faith, because as it stands right now, there are a lot of people who loved Bungie, but do not like the new devs that have Halo, do not like Halo 4 and 5, and think that Halo's been dragged into the gutter. This is your opportunity to show them that their faith has been misplaced and that you are safe hands for their franchise. They didn't do that. Instead, they just made a trailer with everybody's favourite charismatic green metal frog, who does the same things he's done in every fucking game, which is underwhelm and be uninteresting, and it's just like, what is this? They showed a Halo that had been all crumbled and broken, which is probably quite important, but I can't even remember when I gave a fuck about Halo's story, so I'm not going to figure out what that was. But it, like, I don't get it. I don't understand. And they closed with this, I think. It was weird. It was really weird. Halo Infinite is a massive game from Microsoft, and that's all they showed. Like, if that's not a misstep, I don't know what is, personally. And I'm not even the biggest Halo guy, as I mentioned, but I believe in Halo because I know what it was when it first came out. I remember when Halo was on top, and when Halo was on top, it was unmatched. It needs to get back to that place again, and this is not how you do that, so I would be worried from what I saw, if I was a fan. Then we have Gears 5, another worrying part of Microsoft's fucking approach this year to E3. So, let's be as brutally honest as we can be, right, folks? Gears of War 4 was not an impressive game. It had impressive parts about it, and if you look into the story of how it came about, there is an impressive story there, but fundamentally, it was underwhelming. If you don't bear in mind that it was a new team making their first Gears of War and trying to establish a foundation to build from, and if you don't take into consideration that's all it was meant to be, that's what they were told to do, you look at Gears of War 4 as an overly safe, very uninteresting, why the hell does this exist when Gears of War 3 ended things so fantastically? Why can't we move on, right? And a lot of the stuff that they've introduced in the new one, a bunch of uninteresting kids who are the offspring of the people you do care about, and yet the people you care about aren't in the game long enough, a whole bunch of new enemies that are bootleg versions of old enemies and nowhere near as interesting as the old versions, and then a whole host of add-ons to Horde and multiplayer that essentially lead to a ridiculous amount of grind involving cards, scrap, and an insane amount of marked up microtransactions. So when you look at Gears in its whole, Gears 4 specifically, you see a fucking dirty cash grab, filthy, underwhelming, uninspiring, underachieving sequel. And it's a sequel I've put over 500 hours in. Because I like the game a lot, but I didn't when I first played it. When I first played it, I felt, as I've just mentioned then, I felt kind of betrayed, I felt it didn't have what it needed, I felt mechanically, the movement felt good, the shooting felt good, but it just should have been better. Like, for me, it should have been 60. I don't know how it wasn't 60. It's 60 now on X, and it is in the multiplayer, but to release a campaign on new tech at fucking 30 again, piss off. Like, I can't even get into that, and I'm not gonna because I'd be speaking for too long. But fundamentally, I love Gears 4, but it took a while to appreciate it, and I still understand why people find it to be frustrating and a non-entity. And I get it, and I support that opinion, because they haven't made you interested. All they've done is pushed you further away with overpriced progression and garbage camouflages. So Gears 5, the inevitable sequel to push on this new trilogy, this is the big one. This is the opportunity for this developer to say, we make Gears now, it's not Epic anymore, this is our series, this is where this franchise is going. They can make bold strides to completely change the formula, to completely subvert expectations, and make you excited for Gears again. And there's nothing more exciting than the idea of a once proud series rising again. Nothing compares to that feeling. But we didn't get it. We did not get it, because what the fuck did they show? Gears Pop, Gears Raid, Gears fucking cheese and tomatoes, like, Gears everything but what we want to see. And then finally, once they'd finished introducing wrestlers and some stupid camera techniques under a stage that nobody gave a shit about, they tell us about Gears of War Escape. So there's a new game mode in Gears of War where people intentionally get snatched, get taken to a nest, and then because they're wearing this breathing apparatus, they don't, like, go into a coma or go dormant or whatever happens. I don't really know. I haven't read the books, I'm not that hardcore. So they wake up in the nest, they set off this, like, kind of machine that maps it or whatever, and then you and a bunch of friends have to escape the nest. And it's like a reverse concept of Horde. Instead of defending against waves, you're trying to escape the central hive of all this bad shit happening. And it shows you the gameplay, and immediately you're like, okay, this looks like something. But on the conference, they showed trailers, so it was all trailers of characters you don't recognise, in a place you don't care about, doing a thing you don't understand. So the whole thing just left me feeling cold. However, I went and looked for more footage for it the other day, and I found some. So a couple of things to take away from it is there are some very big changes, and by big changes, they're actually small in the grand scheme of things, but they're big for Gears. So the first thing that jumped out at me is there's hit markers. And I know what you're thinking, Chris, we've been seeing hit markers since COD 2, right, or whatever. COD 4 definitely had them. Hit markers are visual information in games that have flourished into their own thing now, and you almost expect them. And when you don't have them, it can sometimes disconnect you from your feeling of attacking and from landing, and the information that you get is lesser, so it's harder to understand what's happening on the battlefield. Well, Gears never adopted them. Gears could have, but it chose not to. And this game has, so you see them. And not only do you see hit markers, but you see HP bars above enemies' heads, sorry. And I've never, ever seen that in Gears. You don't usually see HP above anything, except for fortifications in Horde. So to see these bars above juvies as they're running around and above the grunts and everything and the hunters, it was weird, really unusual. And then the biggest kicker on top of that, they've changed the damage omen. So Gears of War has an iconic symbol for death. It is the skull inside the cog, and as you take damage, it fills up and it affects the screen, and if it completes, you die, right? Well, now it's inverted. So the screen gets red and flushes towards the center, and in the center there is a cog-shaped window that sees through the red effect and shows the screen. And it doesn't sound like a big thing, guys, but that's a massive thing for a Gears hardcore fan, because you are fundamentally changing something that has been the way it's been forever. And I don't know how people are going to take it, and it makes me wonder if you're going to be able to turn it off, because it sounds like the dumbest, most cosmetic thing, but it means something in Gears. And ever since the beginning, people complained that the cog obscured your character when you were dying, and it made it difficult to aim. So you can understand why they would want to change it, because it does make sense, but I would be lying if I were to tell you that I did not feel a twinge for the old ways, because I'm so used to it. I don't even see the omen anymore, it's that natural in my playstyle, so that's a drastic change for me personally. But they didn't show the right things for Gears 5 in my opinion. It comes out in September. I'm excited that they're going to try harder and try to make it their own title, and I want it to be great, but I would be lying if I said that I don't have doubts, because I do. And then they showed Blair Witch, which I found to be absolutely vexing. It looked like a combination of Resident Evil 7 and Outlast, and kinda Amnesia-styled Slender Man. You move around exceptionally slowly in a dark place with a camera doing absolutely nothing and wondering why the fuck you exist. So I won't be going anywhere near that because I didn't even like that movie, let alone a video game based off of it 20 years later. Then there was LEGO Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. LEGO Star Wars is I mean, you either like it or you don't you? It's a kid's game in many ways, but adults can enjoy it. When I used to be a big achievement whore, I played like LEGO Batman, I played previous LEGO Star Warses when they were first coming out, I played LEGO Indiana Jones, I played all of those things, and the first few times you play a LEGO game to completion, they're really fun, they're really satisfying. They're well-made games that are simple, they're not too taxing, and you just kind of veg out and just smile, and it's LEGO, and LEGO reminds us of when we were kids. It reminds us of asking our parents for it, and our parents turn around and saying, no, it's too expensive, here's some bootleg LEGO that doesn't work as well. And if you haven't experienced it, you might get that with this. But if you have, I think LEGO has kind of passed us by. I think it needs to change what it is, because there's been so much of it, the stagnation is real. But this is every Star Wars game, right, in one version. So if you love Star Wars and you love LEGO, this could be fantastic. But it's still LEGO, so probably not. And then we had Bleeding Edge. So Bleeding Edge is a multiplayer Overwatch-inspired shooter that looks like dog shit. End of text. Now this is the game that Ninja Theory are working on next after Senua's wonderful, fun, smiling, strange-faced, gawpy-eyed dementia adventure. And it looks like a competitive third-person shooter. They didn't really show much about it. They talked a bunch of nonsense for a while, and the character designs all look like the character designs from pretty much everything that gets made these days, and it makes me wonder, why does everybody design characters that way? I personally did not see a single thing interesting about it, and I don't even really trust the pedigree of Ninja Theory anymore, because outside of Enslaved and DMC, I don't like their games. Then they showed Battletoads, which I played Battletoads on the NES and on the SNES. There's definitely a toad-shaped hole in my heart where Battletoads used to occupy, but the art style on the new one that they showed, I didn't like it. I thought the ones on the SNES looked far better. It had more character, it had more charm, it was just better pixel art. The new one looked like bootleg and weird, and I don't know what they were thinking personally. There are a few things that can put me off, like an art style, and this put me off in the space of 10 seconds. So it could be really fun, it could be classic, Rare-inspired Battletoad action, but the artwork, unless there's a classic filter, I can't justify caring. And then there was Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, which confused me and everybody who was in the stream watching with me, because Age of Empires 2 is one of the greatest PC games ever made. I remember this game from when I was younger, and it was just amazing. It was quintessential RTS. Exactly what it wanted to be, exactly what it needed to be. It's one of those games that goes down with things like, Baldur's Gate, if you were a Baldur's Gate guy, Dungeon Keeper, if you were into that, Diablo 2, these games that we remember that were so good for what they were, and they did what they did perfectly. That's the same thing. If you like Age of Empire, it's probably exciting news. I haven't thought about Age of Empire in a long time, and I don't know any of its history since when I was younger, so who knows, right? But then they showed Wasteland 3. I thought that this looked really unusual. I've heard of Wasteland because I heard it was like Fallout, like classic Fallouts, and people love it, but I had no idea it looked like this looked. So I was watching it, and I was really confused because I thought it was maybe XCOM or something, and it was, lo and behold, Wasteland. So it's an established franchise, it's got a lot of people who are devout fans. I don't really know what to think about it because I've never played them. And then this was a surprise. Microsoft Flight Simulator. So back when I was a kid, PCs were for Solitaire and Flight Simulator. They did very little else. Like, if somebody had a game on PC, it was a goddamn Flight Simulator, and they had one of those control sticks, the fucking jet sticks. I used to play FIFA 96 with one of those jet stick things, those like joystick plane controller things. And admittedly, in that game, all you really needed to do is pass and shoot, and that. I don't even remember how I sprinted. Maybe I never did. I was too cool. I was Patrick Kluivert. He was the centre forward at the time that I was really, really good with from Ajax, if you know football, which you might do. And this was one of those games that everybody had, so to see it make a return is really cool for the people that are into the simulating flight stuff. but that's just not something that appeals to me. It's like Forza, you know, you either like it or you just avoid it. And then there was Minecraft Dungeons. I'm not a Minecraft guy. I never will be. I respect Minecraft for its learning capabilities and its creativity, because in my opinion, Minecraft is essentially digital Lego. It is the Lego of the next generation, and the creativity that it can afford to people who are creative, and then the enjoyment it can give to people who are not so creative but they can enjoy others' creations vicariously, is priceless. And as much as I would like to shit on Minecraft because it's so easy to do, I still respect the shit out of it. So Minecraft Dungeons could be really, really fun because it's combining perhaps the Diablo dungeon crawler elements into a different aesthetic, and anything with Minecraft on it's going to sell because kids love it. So very good choice there for Microsoft on the budget line, but creatively for somebody like myself, it's not really going to scratch my personal itch. Then they showed a game called Spiritfarer, which I'm going to have to fucking Google because I don't even remember what the hell that was. Oh, it was the one where he kept hugging like the fucking ankler people and the person in the weird hat. So, well, it looked beautiful, but I don't know, man. Probably not for me, that one. And it's coming on Game Pass, so you can play it for free if you want to check it out. Then they showed 12 Minutes, which was kind of like Groundhog Day, and some murder mystery that you had to unravel. And the concept of this sounds fantastic. You are going to repeat the same sequence to find out what the hell's going on in this murder mystery, and that's the type of game that you play once, you love, and you'll never go back to, because they don't really have the replay value, and they don't really have the gameplay that elicits repeated runs, but that first run will be something special, and I'm sure the story's really cool, because time travel's always convoluted, and if it's done well, it's fascinating. So that could be awesome, but there are people that will look at that and be like, this is a movie, not a game, I don't give a shit. Then there was Forza Horizon, Lego Speed Champions expansion. Because when I think Forza with a T, because some people say it like that, I think Lego. When I think cars, I think Lego cars. And when I think what else could happen for Forza Horizon, it's obviously Lego, right? I mean, what else would you want? You wouldn't want a man on top of your car, wielding a weapon and some kind of car combat between vehicles. No, who the hell would want that? Modern day vault, you know? Modern day fencing. Modern day jousting, can you imagine that? Like, you could have all three as different sports. Driving along with a dude on top of your car, you get close to where the goal is and he vaults off it with a big stick to see how far he gets. Can you imagine it? The Olympics with cars? It would be sick. But what do we get? Lego. And then they showed Crossfire X, and by showing Crossfire X, they solidified one of the greatest issues that this E3 has had. This notion that showing a trailer of not actual gameplay and giving no idea of what the fuck is going on is somehow a good way to build hype. I don't know a single person in my stream that gave a single fuck about this game by the end of it, because there was no game to show. It was a bunch of random military jargon, random military images, and absolutely zero context for what the hell it is. I'll never understand why anybody thinks that entices or teases. You have to give a hook. If there's no hook, you will catch no fish. And then they did show Gears Pop, which I think looks atrocious. But, you know, that's just because I don't really like pop toy things. Then there was EA. So EA was the first conference I watched, and it was a banger, dude. An absolute banger. They starred the first piece of footage shown for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which is on PC, Xbox One, and PS4. I'm surprised it's not on the Switch with all the shit they've been trying to push on that. And I have to be honest here, guys. This is a recipe for everything I love. This is Respawn, a very talented developer, Star Wars, an awesome series that's had some highs and lows, and almost character action adventure features with complicated combat developed by the director of God of War 3. These are three things that if you were to say to me, I would give you money immediately because it's exactly what I want from a game. But when I watched this trailer, I have never ever blown so cold on something Star Wars in my entire life. And I'm somebody who really, really likes Battlefront 2, a game that got assassinated when it came out. I've played a next-gen Star Wars game with beautiful graphics on the Frostbite engine, with beautiful sound and beautiful lighting and lightsabers that mean a fuck. And this game looked soft and it did not pop. The lightsabers were muted and unimpressive and didn't even seem like lightsabers. They were just glowing swords. It was very bizarre. It had these wall running sequences that looked awkward with weird animations, and it had the most simplistic looking combat. I wouldn't have been surprised if it had pulled out and said it was for iOS, because it just did not look like it flowed. It did not look like it had any kind of like flair or character. It looked like science fiction souls being ripped off by a studio that's never made that kind of game. And I know that that's probably not going to be the case, because it has a great pedigree, and I'm still stoked for this game, and it's coming out quite soon, so I'm hoping they're just going to elevate it. But it just looked really underwhelming to me. Like, taking on an enemy one at a time. The enemy jumps over him and doesn't even hit him because its attack was too ambitious for where he was. Like, it looked like baby's first action game, and I've played a lot of action games, guys. I expect a high caliber, especially from these kind of people. Stig made Gears of War 3. Say what you want about that game. I don't think it's the best Gears of War, but it's fucking impressive in a lot of ways. And if the only thing that we've inherited into this Star Wars game from that is walking with a camera up our ass through a hollow fucking corridor that's so close we're claustrophobic, I'm going to be really disappointed. But it's, you know, maybe they've done this intentionally. Show them something that doesn't look that sick, and then when the game comes out, it blows them away. But what I saw, I thought it looked bad. I did. And I don't want to be overly negative, even though unfortunately I am full of opinions that are contrary to every other YouTuber. But I just did not see the appeal of this game. And on paper, I would have bought it without seeing it. Which goes to show how disappointed I was with what they showed. But then they went on to Apex Legends Season 2. Season 2 in Apex Legends seemed to be a lot of camouflages, a lot of fucking banners, a lot of worthless like outfits for shit that you can't even see because it's fucking first person. And then they introduced a new weapon, which I totally called on the stream, which was hilarious. The L-Star from Titanfall 2, an energy-based weapon that fires projectiles. And if you've never played Titanfall 2, it is a new weapon to you, and you might be excited. But to everybody who's put as much time into that to Titanfall 2 as a bunch of me and my friends have, it's just a fucking joke. They're literally asset-swapping features from a game that came out years ago. And I'm not impressed by that, especially considering how successful this game has been and how much attention this game has got. Bear in mind, guys, right? The game where that gun comes from is better than Apex Legends in every conceivable fucking way. It has a fully fledged campaign, it has a fully fledged cooperative mode with multiple maps, and a fully fledged multiplayer with multiple maps, multiple game modes, more weapons. Every conceivable way it's better than Apex, and it got 1/10 of the interest that Apex got. Probably 1/100th of the interest. Titanfall 2 died. It died on its own shield for no other reason than a terrible marketing scheme at the time and bad timing, whereas Apex Legends has soared off the backs of its hard work. And coming from somebody who's a very passionate fan of Titanfall, I think it's fucking disgusting that they're essentially cannibalizing that franchise into this. And the only good thing to come from it, in my opinion, is that it's making a lot of people who like Apex take an interest to look back at Titanfall to see where all this cool shit came from. It's crazy. But if you like Apex, maybe this was perfect. I got the feeling it was underwhelming, and they really need to up their game, because attentions are waning. The Battle Royale pantheon is crowded right now. You have to make your name and drive it home hard, or people don't care. People will stop. You're going to be another, what was it called? Realm Royale, or what it was called? Like, there's been so many of these fucking different things. And now we have Fallout 76 Royale. Can't wait for that one. Nobody's going to play that one, surely. But then they showed Battlefield 5, and I'm always confused when they show Battlefield 5, because much like Titanfall, and much like Battlefront 2, Battlefield 5 is being crucified in the media. The player base is dwindled. It never even really became what it was meant to be, and compared to the numbers that they were pushing in Battlefield 1, it seems like 5 is almost a universal failure, right, in a lot of ways. People are angry at the choices, people are angry at what they're focusing on. You know, people don't care about fucking female Nazis on the front line and all this nonsense. They want a good, solid game with great gameplay and lots of reasons to keep playing. And unfortunately, the developers have kind of ostracized themselves with some of the statements they've made and some of the political views that they've eschewed into the game. And it happens. And I just feel like whenever you show Battlefield 5 now, you're essentially waiting for a joke at the end, because it's become the butt of a joke. And it's unfortunate, because Battlefield was a treasured series, and probably still is. But for me, I played it, I thought the campaign was shit. I didn't get a chance to play the multiplayer, which is the real reason you buy the game. I thought the multiplayer looked fine, but advertising map packs, and I don't know, man. Who gets interested in map packs anymore? You have to be deep, right? You have to be so deep in the game. And even then, if you're deep enough to care about a map pack, you're already buying it. They didn't need to advertise it, because you're already buying it. So it just seems like time that could have been filled with something else. But because there was so little of something else, they filled it with that. And then they showed The Sims 4, which, if you like Sims, I'm certain that this expansion is going to be something up your alley. But to me, it just seems really confusing, because it's a pretty old game now, isn't it? Didn't it come out in like 2016, something like that? So in the grand scheme of video games, that's quite old, even though it's barely nothing in the grand scheme of time. And it looks like a dated game. And if you're not into Sims, I just don't see how showing a tropical island and people swimming and... Like, what do you do in those games once you finish decorating your house and finding creative ways to kill your people? Like, I don't know. Someone has to know, right? Then they showed FIFA 20. FIFA 20 is a mammoth of a title for EA. I'm not going to convert you into the joys and wonders of FIFA, and it just is what it is, isn't it? They showed Volta Soccer or something, which is essentially what scrubbers do when they don't have any grass near where they live because it's so full of gangbangers. That's pretty much my village. We played more on concrete than we ever did on grass, so I kind of feel for that aspect of FIFA, so that's cool, I guess. They showed various other things. Football is football, you either like it or you don't. It's the beautiful game. It's whatever it is. It's very popular, it's not going away, and people lap it up if they like it. Everyone else just sits there vexed and wondering, why is our species like this? But alas, we are. Then they showed Madden 20, the American version of FIFA. The big version, the big game of everybody likes to cuddle wearing armour and laying on the floor, and somebody blows a whistle every 5 minutes so that we can all hug. But people love it, you know. It's a big title for them, it makes a lot of money, and if you like Madden, you're probably loving it, and more power to you. Then there was the Bethesda. So Bethesda did Deathloop, which I don't even know what this was. So I really like Arcane Studio. I think the Dishonored games are cool. But from what we saw of this game, it's very difficult to understand what the point is. So it can be tricky to justify too much excitement, but I have faith in that developer and I hope they make something good. Then they showed Doom Eternal. I was a little bit disappointed in the Doom Eternal footage they showed because they didn't show anything too new, but what they did show was, you know, kind of classic Doom gameplay. A lot of people were having issues with the person playing, which I feel like I'm a little bit more patient when it comes to watching somebody who's not the best on the sticks, because I find it quite fascinating to watch people play video games. I like the decision making, I like the difference in abilities, I like the diversity of it, so I don't really notice that stuff too much unless it's very, very bad. But I felt that they were fine. They were having a good time, it seemed like. And Doom Eternal looks great, so something to get excited for. Then they showed Elder Scrolls Blades, which I don't understand this. It's like Skyrim, but you swipe the screen, and it seems to be very combat-centric, which is mind-boggling to me, because I think the combat in Skyrim is probably some of the worst combat I've ever played in the history of combat. I'd rather play fucking co-op than fight in Skyrim, I really would. And I know that that's me just projecting my general lack of enjoyment of that series, but this seems to be popular if they're porting it to all these other places, so it must have a ton of players, and if those players are enjoying it, more power to them. Then we have Fallout 76 Nuclear Winter. This was the Battle Royale that they're mentioning. They're doing a bunch of free weekends for Fallout 76, and they did kind of say the launch wasn't very good. I don't think they apologised enough, though. But it's very difficult to see a company apologise because it means that they're wrong, and the moment a company starts admitting they're wrong, they're fucked. So it makes sense. And then they showed Ghostwire Tokyo. This was my favourite thing at E3, guys, by far, and admittedly it falls into the pitholes of, you know, showing a lot of trailer and a little bit of potentially gameplay that could be kind of gameplay but probably isn't. Shinji Mikami came out. And if you know of my channel and you know of my opinions, Shinji Mikami is kind of a gaming hero to me. I think he is, if not the most inspirational person, because, well, I don't even have to explain why. You know why. The stuff he's achieved, the people he's inspired, it's just profound, and I adore absolutely everything that man represents. I would love to work with him, but I probably never will. And he showed a new IP, which just stole my heart, because I was terrified it was going to be Evil Within 3. But instead they showed Ghostwire Tokyo, which is this supernatural, kind of investigative game, where you're moving around Tokyo trying to stop this infernal threat of whatever it is, of these people with umbrellas and stretchy fingers, and several other strange things, like this crazy masked dude who looked a bit like a ninja. And then the main character has a bow on his back and like a weird pistol that's got a strange attachment on it. And all I'm thinking is new IP, new mechanics, potentially the influence from Shinji to have new sexy awesome things, and a new creative director in the lady that came out and presented it. And when you think of the people that Shinji Mikami has put faith in and allowed to make video games under him, where he's given them an opportunity to direct and they've gone on to make greater things, we got Kamiya from Shinji. So this woman could be the next Kamiya. She could be better than him, you know? She could be the future of the games I fall in love with. So for me, it's a very exciting moment, even though we got very little of what it is, and it's probably not going to be out for another 2 to 3 years, but I'm very excited. And the girl who's directing it, I keep forgetting her name, I do apologise. She worked on Bayonetta, she worked on Okami, and she worked on The Evil Within 1, so her pedigree's pretty high. She was an artist, if you're wondering. Then they showed Wolfenstein Youngblood, which I'm really excited for because I like Wolfenstein. I personally don't think that the spin-offs are as good as the main ones. I thought Old Blood was kind of lazy. I enjoyed it, but it was just reusing assets and reselling something so that they can get money back on the returns of what they invested. I understand it from a commercial perspective, but from a gameplay perspective, it added nothing that I liked. So I'm hoping that this one is better, and it should be, fingers crossed. Then they showed Wolfenstein Cyberpilot, which was VR, and they showed something called Commander Keen. I have no idea what Commander Keen is. It apparently was created in 1991. It's some cartoon. I had no idea. I'd never seen it before. Most people at the conference were as perplexed as I was, because it's just not something that you hear often, and it was confusing. And then there was Square Enix. So I think Square had one of the strongest press conferences in this E3, and it wasn't difficult because this E3 was rough. Nintendo did well, Square did well, everybody else kind of underwhelmed. Whoever won it, it's more of a reflection of what you personally want. So, Final Fantasy VII Remake is what they opened with, and they showed some combat. They showed that when you attack people, you fill your ATB gauge, and then when it's full, you can then proceed to do magic and moves and do limit breaks without filling your limit gauge, because he did the Braver, which I didn't understand. But essentially, you attack them, you fill the bar, then you cash in the bar with a more damaging move. And they showed you that there's the opportunity to pause the game and then command various players in your party. So it's a combination of real time and turn-based to make it a little bit more faithful to the original, which I thought was cool. They showed Tifa. They've made her boobs smaller, which is probably for the best. Poor girl's spine just couldn't handle them. They showed some Barret, and then they showed the first boss, the Scorpion boss, the red dude that was actually quite tricky for a first boss if you fought him incorrectly. The game looks beautiful. They've released that it's going to be 2 discs, 2 full Blu-rays full of content, and 2 separate releases. The word on the grapevine is that Midgar's going to be the first disc, and then the second disc is going to be the rest of the game. To which a lot of people are confused. How the hell do you make Midgar last that long? Because a lot of people already felt like Midgar lasted too long to begin with. You know, Midgar's one of those areas that kind of drags when you do it repeatedly. I guess we'll find out when it comes out. It's coming out next year, and I'm excited for it because I do love Final Fantasy VII and I've not played it in a long time. Then they showed Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. Don't buy that game, guys. Don't fund that garbage. Then they showed Final Fantasy VIII Remastered, which was kind of exciting because This is a game that's had a lot of problems. They did not have the original assets for this game, so remastering it was going to be much more difficult. But the problem I had when you were watching it is that the frame rate wasn't good. There were moments in the trailer where the frame rate was slowing down, and the frame rate in Final Fantasy on PS1 was never the best, but we're not on PS1 anymore, and you're reselling as an old game, you should at least use new technology to make it better, and I really hope that they do, because Final Fantasy VIII might be a bit of a black sheep of the series, but it's one of my favourites, and I think it has the best combat in any Final Fantasy, and the flexibility that's afforded thanks to junctioning is unmatched. It's just so clever and so subtle and graceful, and you don't even need to use it, you know, you can do all kinds of things without it, but it's nuts. So I will always have a place in my heart for that game, and I will always have the patience for it, even though the first time I played it I didn't like it. Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. So Final Fantasy XIV got some DLC, this like new expansion. I don't know anything about Final Fantasy XIV, so I can't even talk. It was colourful, it's got some really, really nice character designs. Then Circuit Superstars. This was an indie team of Mexican game developers who want to make a top-down racing game. In the old days, with Micro Machines and everything, these top-down racing games were quite frequent because it was what the technology could handle. You don't see them anymore, and they're trying to make another one in modern context, and I wish them all the best, but I can't imagine anything worse. I don't really want to play it, but hopefully you do, and hopefully they'll get their money back on their return. Then there was War of the Visions Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, which I thought looked pretty cool, and then somebody in my chat explained to me that this is a gacha game, and I've heard that term before, but I didn't really know what it means. But it's essentially a game that is designed to steal your money so that you can gamble and get bollocks out of loot crates and stuff, which I don't really support, so that's unfortunate. Then they showed Romancing Saga 3, which, if you like RPGs, this was definitely the conference for you. Romancing Saga is one of those RPGs that I never liked. I don't know what it was, I just never got into Romancing Saga, so for me, it wasn't much of an entity. And then they showed Scarlet Grace, which I don't even remember Scarlet Grace. It must not have been the biggest announcement. Let me just double check it. What did this look like? Oh, it was the other version of Romancing Saga, right? It was a different version, I think. And of course, Google Images gives me nothing but questionable females. Always good, thank you, Google. And then they mentioned Last Remnant Remastered coming to Switch. Last Remnant is one of those like last bastions of really interesting RPGs from the Xbox 360. When this game came out, this was about the time when my love for RPGs was being crucified. Because after this, everything started to be shit for me. There was Infinite Undiscovery, there was Last Remnant, there was like Star Ocean, you know, the Last Hope or whatever it was called. And then we were on the decline at that point. And now RPGs are just... they're not even worth talking about for me. Which is really unfortunate because I used to fucking live them. But The Last Remnant was a weird one, so for that one to come back is kind of cool. If you never played it, I recommend it because it's such a bizarre one. And I think it might... is it Tri-Ace that did this? Developed by Tri-Ace and published by Square. I can't remember, but I know it's interesting. A very different and unique combat system. And then there's Trials of Mana, the collection of Mana. So this was all of the Legend of Mana and so on and so forth, all together, coming together and being re-released, which is cool if you like the Mana series. It's a series that has a lot of love from a lot of people, so that was cool to see. And then lastly, we get to Ubisoft. Ubisoft showed Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which I just can't even begin with this one, so I'm not going to talk about it. If you like Ghost Recon Wildlands, and I don't know why you would, in fact, it'd be nice if we could put everybody who does like that game onto a boat and send them to a country so that we can get rid of you. We might be able to get good games again. But if you liked it for whatever reason, you probably will like this because it looks just as half-assed and uninteresting and completely barren and devoid of fun. The cool thing about it, of course, is John Bernthal came out with a cute dog, which is one of the best parts of the press conference for me. It's up there with Keanu Reeves, obviously, because that was a good moment. Then they showed Division 2, which is just kind of like, Division 2 is a cool game, nobody's give it a chance because Division 1 was like an empty promise that only got good towards the end, Destiny style. So they're doing some free weekends with Division 2. Everything I hear about this game is that it's great and that people should give it a chance because they've improved all the shit that needed to be improved. And then they showed DLC for For Honor, which I didn't even know people still played For Honor. And I think For Honor's cool, and if you're still into it, this is cool for you, right? Then there was a massive press conference focus on Watch Dogs Legion, where everybody and their mother was putting on their best English accent, some doing a better job than others, as they walked around the streets of London as various different people, getting assaulted by drones and doing old-person parkour. And Watch Dogs is one of those series that you're either into or you're not. It's the new twist on this one is that you get to play as anybody, so you can kind of hack into anybody and use them as a person, but it looks like Watch Dogs. I get the feeling that Watch Dogs was a bit of a bust for Ubisoft and it didn't have the prestige that Assassin's Creed did, and that's why we're not going to see a million of them and we don't see one every year, because I just don't think it makes the same amount of money. I could be wrong, I often am, but there you go, Watch Dogs. You either love it or you don't. Then they showed Assassin's Creed Odyssey, an update, which I like the idea of updating games with cool new stuff. Even though I haven't really played too much of Odyssey, it's always good to get new shit. Then they showed Roller Champions, which was essentially just Rocket League-esque game, where you're roller skating around. Roller Derby meets Rocket League. Had the same kind of aesthetic, it's going for the same kind of market. And then they closed with Gods and Monsters, which was really interesting because it looked like Ubisoft's attempt at Legend of Zelda. And I'm all for Zelda clones, guys, because they can spawn off and become really, really good franchises. Let me just double check to see if there's anything that I scanned past. So The Outer Worlds was something that was shown on Microsoft's press conference, which is Obsidian making a Fallout, basically. It looks really interesting. The moment you realise that it's essentially the people that made New Vegas making a new game that's like New Vegas, you are immediately sold if you like what that means, because it looks cool. They showed Witcher 3 on the Switch. And that's about as much as I'm going to say about that. They showed Cyberpunk 2077 because Cyberpunk is looking really cool. But once again, they keep showing trailers, and I don't like that. I am of the mind that a trailer is to tease the announce for something, but gameplay is always better. If you announce a game with gameplay, I will love you forever, because I don't give a fuck how cool your cutscene is that you had outsourced to somebody that makes really pretty models. I don't give a shit about that. I can't control that. It's going to be years until VRs and fleshlights get that kind of technology, but I will be there day one, don't you worry. But when it comes to games, I need to see what I'm going to be fucking doing, and I need to see what it's going to be like when I'm doing it. So for Cyberpunk comes out quite soon in the grand scheme of things. It's been in development for a long time. The last time we saw it, we saw some gameplay. The gameplay was not the most convincing. There were a lot of people that got left cold from it. They could have made the sexiest cut of a bunch of sick things, given us no context, and shown us awesome stuff on loop for like 2 minutes, and afterwards, we would have all been covered in our own semen, excitable, and wanting more. But instead, here's a fucking trailer, and I can't stand it. It bugs the tits out of me. They also showed Contra Anniversary Collection, so if you like Contra, that'll be sweet. But they showed this new one, and it looked rough. It looked like it was being played on an undocked Switch. It was like 720 resolution. It did not look aesthetically pleasing at all. And I like Contra. Contra's one of those old school last bastions of really fucking difficult shooters. So it really sucks that the most recent one looks like shit. A couple of other things that were shown. Phantasy Star Online 2 was shown at the Xbox conference, which was really confusing. I remember Phantasy Star back in the day. It was very popular. A lot of people like it. It could be something great for many people. And then they showed Panzer Dragoon, which on this list it says Panzer Dragoon Remake. I thought it was a new one. If they're just remaking the first one, that's less interesting, but it's still Panzer. You haven't seen Panzer Dragoon in ages. That is a game series that most people will not have played, but it's cool. It's like Star Fox, only with dragons. Then there was Tales of Arise. So this was really surprising for me. I don't like Tales games anymore. I haven't liked a Tales game since Tales of Vesperia, and there was parts of Vesperia that I really didn't like either. To me, they're just Emmerdale. They're Emmerdale with really good combat, but there's no reason to use the combat because the story's so fucking tedious and full of 7-year-olds talking about bollocks for 40 hours. And I have big issues with that. But the biggest issue I've always had with the Tales series is that they've had like 15 years of development and they haven't changed. The only thing they've done is incrementally change certain gameplay mechanics and enhance them ever so slightly. And incremental change is great, but I want to see bold change. I want to see fucking risks. I want to see an engine difference. I want to see a complete overhaul. I want them to do something new. Instead of just half-arsing the same engine every time with slightly different this and a story that's just as obfuscating as it always was, with 7 girls with pink hair. This is what I want. Tales of Arise looks like it's a completely new engine, the visuals look way better, it looks way more ambitious, the combat looks different, like, it looks like they're finally taking Tales to a place it should have gone 10 years ago. So for me, it's really exciting. If you're super into Tales, you might be looking at this and being like, whoa, I don't know, dude, this looks too different, this is taking away what I love, and if so, that would suck. But from what I saw, this is the first time I've looked at a Tales game and I haven't wanted to immediately not look at it. So that's really good news for me personally. Very excited to see where that goes. And then there was Elden Ring, which this is the footage that From Software shared. This is a union between George R.R. Martin and FromSoft Miyazaki, and apparently this is going to be an open world Dark Souls-esque game. This is what Miyazaki himself has said. So, for the people who weren't the biggest fan of Sekiro and the direction that the team took with that game, this is looking more traditionally at what they were doing with Souls, but on a grander stage and on something more fantasy-inspired that's hopefully going to be helped by George R.R. Martin's obsession with flaccid penises and boobs. So that should be good. The problem I have again, they showed a bunch of like non-committed scenes threaded together loosely with a bunch of fantastical imagery that looks like it could fit at the beginning of a Souls game where some narrator tells you what all these people are, but we didn't get the narrator, so instead it was just a blacksmith breaking his shoulder with every time he struck the metal. It was like a bunch of like weird knight dudes with the swords in the ground and then someone's armor, and it looked nice, it looked fine, but you get nothing from that. I would have gladly traded it for, just give me something, dude. Give me something that looks like a video game instead of this montage of dudes in armor. So I find it almost impossible to get too excited for it because you can't see a damn thing from that. However, the idea of Souls on a larger scale sounds great, because I love when From Software come together with what they do best, and I'm hoping that this will be another example of it. And I want it to be risky, I want it to be daring, I want it to take it and move it forward and have a logical extension of what they've been building on. If this is just Souls 1.5, I'll be very disappointed, and even then, I'll still probably love it. But I'm hoping that they break the mold and they establish themselves again, because this could be the Demon Souls of the next generation, and that's exactly what I want it to be. Then they showed Dying Light 2. Dying Light 2 looked like Dying Light. If you like it, you're going to get stoked. They're not my games, so I don't really mind too much. They showed Dauntless, which is available right now. They showed the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance Tactics, which I thought looked a bit rough, even though I do have quite the favour of Dark Crystal. I think it's a cool movie, and it's nice to see the Henson puppets getting some more attention. They showed something to do with Super Lucky Tail, which is cool because it's a platformer and you don't see too many of those. And then looking from this, that's pretty much most of it. I might have missed some things, but I feel like that's a decent wrap-up of a ton of things, right? I've talked for a good hour and 5 minutes about E3. Probably offended somebody. Just how it works, by slandering the game they love. But fundamentally, I think that E3 is always an exciting time, even if it's disappointing, because it reminds us of what video games are. Video games are these things that enable us to feel something that is difficult to feel elsewhere. There is a joy and an enjoyment that comes from playing a really, really good game that movies can't give you, books can't give you, blowjobs can't give you. You know, it's a different type of thing. And when you see something new, something exciting, something that you can't wait to get your hands on, it's like being transported back to being a child again, waiting for Christmas. And there's nothing better than that wonderful transitory feeling of the excitement you got when you were younger. And that's what video games are. And as much as this year has been very disappointing and immeasurably disappointing for myself, it still has those wonderful studs of shining stars on that black velvet canvas of disappointment. And I cannot wait to get to those exciting moments and ignore those disappointing announcements. I can't wait to see the future and just the potential of where video games can go in the future. And it would be the utmost pleasure to me if you would join me for that. So thank you so much for listening and watching, and enjoy the rest of E3, and you take care now.